Well. We're here. We're doing this.
From Pilates class to the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to Studio MDR.
Truly.
I have about 6 hours of questions for you.
Copy that.
I'm just kidding. No, I don't. But I really want to start at the very beginning. That's where I usually start. I want to know about little you. Tell me about little you and your story.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been thinking back a lot about me in my 20s and childhood me. And I think I was always a very precocious little girl, but grew up in a very traditional Latino household where the mantra was you are to be seen and not heard. And, there's this phrase in Spanish that says, calladita te ves más bonita, which means you look prettier when you shut up.
Really?
Right. So the irony that I ended up as someone who literally talks for a living does not go above my head.
And did you grow up here in LA?
Not in LA. Okay. I am a transplant, like many, many people here in the business. I grew up in New York and Washington Heights, and then we moved to Miami when I started high school.
Okay.
So East Coast girly for sure. But I've been in California for almost a decade now, in LA for half that time. So yeah.
Growing up, did you ever see people that looked like you on the television screen?
No, not at all. And I think the intersectionality part of the Latino community is so huge because while there was only Spanish language television in my household, most of them were white Hispanics, right? Not Afro-Latinos or Black Latinos that looked like my family, who's from the Dominican Republic. So I still didn't find, even though they were speaking the language that we spoke at home, didn't find there was a place for me in that space or even in the media that I was consuming on a daily basis.
And as a kid, did you always want to go into sports? What was your upbringing and what made you and what fueled your passion for sports broadcasting? Yeah.
So, I actually didn't get into this or realize that it was even a path for me until well into my 20s. I was always in the arts. So dance and cheer and theater and those type of things. And so I always knew I was going to be a performer of some kind. And this is an extension of that, right? But sports was always part of my life. My dad played professional basketball in the Dominican Republic. So when we moved to New York, he was still playing basketball, but as more of a hobby. He was part of kind of some Optimist leagues, but I was at the gym or on the court or at a game with him more often than I wasn't, right? So he'd pick me up from dance and we'd go to the basketball court. And so I was always around it. And baseball in Dominican Republic is essentially another religion. So sports has always been a really big part of the ecosystem that I grew up in. So when I got into broadcast, I knew that sports was the arm that I wanted to follow.
You've been traveling all over the place.
Yes.
All the time. You were at the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. How was that?
Super Bowl is nuts. It always is. It's just how people use the Super Bowl as a reference, Fashion Week is my Super Bowl or X, Y, and Z is my Super Bowl. No, the Super Bowl is my Super Bowl. And it is insane. You don't sleep on those days. It's just an overstimulation of riches, but it's a lot. By the time I get back home, I'm in a corner in the fetal position, just rocking back and forth.
Well, and speaking of which, wasn't it really hard to get back home during the Super Bowl?
New Orleans really must have loved me because they did not want me to leave. We had a 12-hour delay on Super Bowl Sunday. Since we live on the West Coast, I'm great, I'll leave in the morning. I wasn't covering the game day of, so I was I'll watch it from my house. What a blessing. So that was our plan. Leave in the morning, get home with plenty of time to watch it. No. 12-hour delay. I was do I live here now? Am I a New Orleans resident at this point? It was crazy. But there's a lot of trauma bonding in the Delta Lounge because it was all people in the biz who were can we please just leave?
Right.
I should have left Saturday, man. Oh, man. But it was a good experience for sure.
Yeah. What was it like broadcasting, hosting, anchoring in that type of environment?
Yeah. I've been so blessed to be able to have that experience going back to 2018 since I started with NFL Network. And I've been so blessed to experience the Super Bowl in so many different capacities, to cover it in different veins. I've actually been on the sideline for a Super Bowl as the in-arena host. And it's just, I never take it for granted. I got to take my dad to a Super Bowl when it was in Miami, full circle moment. And so I never take those things for granted, right? That the Super Bowl is a normal part of my life when so many fans don't even get to go to a regular NFL game, right? So like I take that as a very big privilege to be able to experience it and then be the eyes and ears for everybody who follows me, everybody who's watching us. Like it's something that I take with such an honor because I know how special it is.
So when did you actually decide this is what I want to do, and where did you go from there?
Yeah, it was well into my 20s when I had dropped out of college. Actually, I was a business major and a dance minor. I wanted to open my own dance studio. That was really my biggest passion in life to this day is dance. And so I dropped out of college because all I was doing was racking up student loan debt. And I decided, okay, well, let me pursue the one thing that I know I really, really love, which was dance. So I danced professionally. I went on tour with several Latin music artists. Like, it was really, really cool.
Amazing.
Eventually, I was cast on a TV show, a Spanish language TV show. So think like J-Lo Fly Girls, like on In Living Color for us, like elder millennials who remember that. That's what we were on the show. We were like the dancers on this like music show. But it was my first intro into TV and broadcast. And I fell in love with production. Actually, I when I re-enrolled in school, I wanted to be a director. I really liked like sort of being in control. So every day I'd show up to the show, you know, we'd finish rehearsal and I'd go up to master control, or I would ask the producers if I could sit in on the production meeting. I would talk to the hosts and I was like, you know what, like I want to do this every day. And I was always sort of like the spokesperson of all of our, you know, our little girl groups and like our dance community. So I was like, I think I have a penchant for public speaking as well. So the next semester I re-enrolled in college, and the rest, as they say, is history.
After that, what happened?
Once I got into college, it was kind of interesting because I felt like when I got back to school, I felt like I was so behind, right? Because I think anyone who knows like the broadcast world, you go to college and then you immediately go to a small market and then you get your reps. And like,
totally.
So I was about 26, 27 at that point. And most folks my age were already on their second or third market. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm still in school. Like, what am I going to do? I feel late. And at the same time, I felt very purpose driven. Like, okay, well, my advantage is I know exactly what I want to do. So like, what internships do I need to do? And I was just like a sponge absorbing everything. So once I got my first job, I continued to follow and pursue my love of dance. So I started in Miami in local news. And I was both a sports reporter and a Miami Dolphins cheerleader at the same time, which was like a really interesting duality to my life. Oh my
goodness.
Yeah. Like all things at once.
Yeah. And being in that community.
Yeah.
So you were a sports reporter in Miami. And then where did you go from then?
From Miami, I went to San Diego. I became the lead sports anchor for both NBC and Telemundo in San Diego. So I was doing both broadcasts every day in both languages, like literally running from one end to the studio to the other because they're two different control rooms. It was nuts, but also one of like the biggest learning experiences, I think, for me that prepared me to pretty much do everything and anything in the broadcast space after that.
I'm so happy you shared that you started later because every woman's journey is so different.
Totally.
And people are always pivoting. And that's something that I've learned so much is that we all become the art of the pivot at some point. It's very rare that a woman just goes from small market, medium, large, network.
Right.
It actually is way more convoluted than that.
Yeah, it's way more complicated and it's much more difficult, I think, than people realize. Like they just figure, oh, this is the trajectory, right? Or like a lot of folks will only know my journey from when I started at the network level at NFL Network. They're like, oh, she started in 2018. You don't just start there. Like,
right.
That's not how it goes. I had been doing it already for 8 years before that, right? So like the tenure is so long. And my best friend says this all the time, the climb takes time. But nobody sees that part. They only want to see sort of what's at surface level. And I think even for me, like when I started, there was very little social media. We had like Facebook, Instagram was maybe coming out. Now the things that are visible are just the things that are most recent, right? But it takes a really long time, a lot of effort, a lot of L's, and a lot of help also to get there.
The climb takes time. That's so good.
Yeah.
When did ESPN call?
Okay, so my journey with ESPN is, of course, very layered. I remember when I was still in Miami, my agent called me and she's like, okay, so they want to come in and test you. Like you can go in and just have sort of like general meetings with all the bosses and they'll put you in the studio and all of that. I knew at that point, I was like, no way I'm ready for ESPN. But like, who says no to the meeting? Like
nobody.
They're going to fly me out? Like, yeah, I'm going to go. And so it's been like almost a decade of like these conversations with ESPN and then bringing me in. And there were times where they did offer me something, but like my other job didn't, agree to it. So it's been this like decade long journey to finally be part of like the bigger ecosystem. But like it works out when it's supposed to work out. But my point in saying that is like sometimes you think like, well, I'm ready, here we go, or I'm not ready, but hey, the opportunity's in front of me. And you can only control your performance and you can only control how you present yourself, right? Everything else, like literally you have nothing to do with. So that's a hard lesson to learn, I think, especially in this industry and the more visible we are as forward-facing people.
You made two incredibly important points. One is that you need to stay in touch with these people even up to a decade. I mean, you said that you started having conversations 10 years ago.
Right.
And you didn't necessarily go to ESPN 10 years ago, but you've continued to stay in touch and they knew about you. Because if they don't know about you, you don't exist to them.
Mm-mm. And here's like the great part of that. Like the seeds that you plant, always take the meeting, right? Even if you feel you're not ready, like they will. I remember someone told me, no, we'll let you know if you're ready. Like whatever you think is in your brain, like let the executives, which is like annoying, but like they'll let you know if you're ready or not. And if you're in the building, it's for a reason. But the seeds that you plant even a decade ago sometimes don't come to bloom for a really, really long time. It really takes time. And one of the folks that I met with in Bristol a decade ago ended up being the person who recruited me to go to NFL Network because he continued to follow my trajectory, was in touch with my agent. And when he got an opportunity and he was in a position to bring in talent, he said, I remember MJ. I've seen what she's doing. Let's bring her in. Let's talk to her. Let's see what the situation is, right? So like, you never know the people who are speaking your name in rooms that you're not even in, right? Like there's always these things at play and at work, and you just have to be prepared, or at least prepared to put yourself out there when the opportunity comes.
And you also made another great point in talking about that it is so subjective too.
Oh my God, yes.
Like
100%.
One person can see that you're ready, another person cannot see you're ready, and neither are right or wrong.
Correct.
It's just the moment and being ready when that luck happens.
Yeah, and like that subjective part is the tough part to swallow, because you're like,
Totally.
I know what I've put in, I know that I'm just as good as folks, and it's like, but why am I not? Because those are the intangibles you can't control. If an executive likes you and they're like, yep, this is the vision I have for this show, boom, you're in. Oh my God, who was it? Anthony Mackie recently just talked about that. And it was a little bit more broad strokes than I was, there's layers there. But essentially what he said is the gatekeepers are the ones who decide who is quote unquote successful, depending on your definition of success, and who isn't. So you can be ready, you can have the experience, you can have the talent. And until that person in a position of power taps you and says, yes, you're the one that I want in there. And those are the things that there's nothing we can do about that.
Right. You need some luck, but you also need to be ready when that luck happens.
Totally. 100%.
So you need to be prepared. You need to have the talent. You need to have all of that.
All of it.
And then you also need the luck. Mm-hmm. Because if you're lucky and then you're not very good,
it'll crumble.
It'll crumble
quick. Yeah. And the business is so unforgiving. And especially if you're a woman in this industry, like the margin of error essentially doesn't exist.
100%. And let's talk about that, because you are an Afro-Latina woman in sports. Do you find that at all? Did you find that at all intimidating when you were first starting out? Do you still feel like you're stereotyped as a woman in this industry?
I think that the stereotype certainly exists, but I try to remember, and we've all heard this phrase, like what other people think about you is none of your business, right? Because what am I supposed to do about that? Nothing. All I can do is like show up authentically as myself. But I've dealt with like every ism you can think of, plus misogyny, plus harassment. I mean, the list goes on and on. But I think realistically, what I most focus on is, what is my superpower? Like, I am different than everybody else in this room, and that's not a bad thing.
Amen. Talk about that.
Yeah, like there are things that I bring to the table that in most rooms that I'm in, no one else can do, whether it's that I'm bilingual, whether it's that I have a different perspective, whether it's that I can connect to the Black and brown players differently, whatever it is, whether it's my life experience, that really makes me a little bit more resilient and like adds texture to the coverage that I bring. And all you can do is, one, show up and do that, and two, hope that it's appreciated and that it resonates not only with the viewers, but with the folks who are making the choices too.
100%.
Yeah.
Talking about ESPN, what was the phone call like getting asked to join that network?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy because I had been in talks with them for so long and we're like peeling back the veil a little bit here.
Right.
But it happens like this sometimes. I was like, okay, well, I'm going, and this is like now my 5th meeting with the network, right? And
yeah.
like, I knew that there were people in the building who like were real fans of me, who understood like what I brought to the table, who knew my trajectory and were rooting for me. But again, it's like the opportunity and the timing has to like all sync up. So at this point I was like, okay, like I'll go in and like talk to everybody again and like, whatever, let's see what happens. Like I sort of took it as been here, like if they call me, they call me. If not, they don't. So it almost took me a minute, like when my agent was like, no, like here's the offer, like it's on the table. I'm like, are you sure? I think it was part of like the guarding myself a little bit. Like, wait a minute, is it actually happening?
But do you ever notice that when you kind of let go
100%
and say, whenever it happens,
Totally.
more things happen quickly that way?
Yeah, when you want it so bad, sometimes you're almost inadvertently trying to force things to happen.
Totally.
And that very rarely works out. Like, I think there's a lot to be said about manifestation and thinking about it, but like part of manifestation is also relinquishing that quote unquote control that we think we have, right? And it just is what it is. And I have to remind myself of that on a daily basis.
We all do. Yeah. It's so easier said than done.
Oh my God. Yeah, for sure.
So you get the call
to
go to ESPN. And what was that experience like? What was your first day like? Tell me about that.
It was kind of weird because in another like synergistic moment, one of my dear friends and who is now essentially the showrunner for SportsCenter here in LA, her name's Aisha, we worked together at NFL Network. So she had transitioned over from NFL Network several years ago to go run SportsCenter LA. And so now it turns out that she and I would be working together in tandem. She's in a leadership position. She freaking crushes it. And so it was one of those things where I felt very much at home. And like for the first time in my career, I was like, I feel this familiarity, even though I've never done this show before. I feel like, okay, like I know people have my back here. The team was so great. It was nuts. And then I'm sitting next to Stan Verrett, who's, you know, a staple at ESPN, especially with the SportsCenter franchise. And he could not have been more kind and excited to bring me on. And it was really cool. Now, let me tell you something. Y'all see SportsCenter and you see the highlights. It is a bear of a show to do.
Tell me about that.
It is a lot. It is like especially because it's in LA, it's at the end of the night, right? So it's 10 o'clock, sometimes 11 o'clock Pacific time. So it's like the middle of the night on the East Coast, right? So what happens is we end up getting everything that's already happened in the sports world for the day. So you have to cram in so much content, so many highlights, interviews, sound throughout the day. Like it is non-stop on that show. So you get to the office and it's like, okay, we're writing our scripts, we're researching, we're adding other notes, we're talking to research to make sure we have I was like, oh my God, child, am I okay? Like it's either going to hurt my brain or help it, like in the long run. But it for me, it was cool because while I've hosted a daily show and done pretty much every role you can think of, this was still a new venture. And I think for me, that's always exciting when even at different points in your career, you're still always learning. You're still a student of the game. And it's been cool to sort of flex those different muscles and like be vulnerable. Like, oh shit, I don't really know everything that's going on here.
Right.
Yeah.
When those want to get into sports, is it smart for them to think, I want sideline reporting, I want host reporting? Like, 'cause there's so many different sectors and avenues.
Yeah. I think it's important to have a clear path of what your ultimate goal is, or things that you know that you can bring to the table. Like, I know that I'm a great sideline reporter. I know that I'm a good beat reporter. I'm a good writer, whatever. But to your point, like, you're always pivoting, and the sports landscape is changing so quickly, faster than we can really keep up with. And so it's tough to figure out like, oh, I want to do this. I'll just go like apply for that job. Like, you get in there. Like, I knew when I got to NFL Network, I wanted to be in studio. But the position that was open was correspondent based out of San Francisco. And I was like, you put me in put me in and I will show you what I can do. And I can, whatever you throw at me, I'm going to do. And trust me, they threw everything at me that first year. And I loved every minute of it because I was also still learning. Yeah. But it also showed them like, okay, she's down. Like, she's got it.
And it's important to stay open to those opportunities because you know what, like you do this one opportunity and you're like, oh, actually, I really love that. Or you're like, that's not what I wanted. Correct. And then that's why you maneuver into something else.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's, it all goes back even to like our early years in J school. Like you do all these internships to figure out what you like. And like I started off in radio and I was like, oh, this is cool. But like, I think TV is really more where I want to go. I did news like as some of my first jobs. I was a traffic anchor, a news anchor. I mean, you name it, I've done it. Truly. But like, I think I'm better for the wear because I've had so many different things and I've been able to flex this toolbox of different skill sets within the industry. So I feel like literally you can throw me out there to do anything. Red carpets, you name it, like literally weather, all of it.
Well, and that's why I hate the titles. That's why my podcast is titled I Am Not a Weather Girl.
Yeah.
Because I think as women, we have so many different attributes that we bring to the table, so many passions. And I don't like fitting myself into one box. Right. And I feel like we're best as leaders, we're best as women when we don't do that.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. Identity, especially within a public-facing job like ours, your identity starts to be tethered to what you do and not who you are.
100%.
And it's tough for us to separate those things. And we get it, especially with social media. Like what we're presenting is like the highlight reel. This is what I do. And like, our jobs are really cool. Like,
right.
Let's call a spade a spade. So like, that's what we're sharing all the time. But there's all of these other facets and other layers to who we are as people. And I think a lot of folks don't lead with humanity first. Especially in this industry, I think sometimes you go and they're like, well, who do you work for? What do you do? Who do you know here? Instead of like, hi, my name is.
Right.
What a concept. So the identity part of it can be very difficult.
I know a lot of women are dealing with layoffs right now, dealing with the burnout. Yeah. How do you stay motivated through all of this?
Yeah, it's hard. I think my biggest motivation is like not being poor again, to be honest with you. Like financial security is I just talked about this on my show, very important to me. Like I grew up in very humble beginnings on government assistance. And I think for me, like my parents immigrated to this country in their 30s. And as the oldest daughter, I was acutely aware of like their sacrifices of what was going on how they stretched things, even though they did their very best with what they had in front of them. And so for me, making sure that one, their sacrifices weren't in vain, but two, that we never go back to that. Not just for myself and my husband and like what we're building, but also for my parents. Like I want to take care of them. And like, so for me, like that's such a huge motivator in making sure that I just stay the path and not let anything fall by the wayside.
Let's talk about your routine and your job. Is it different every day? Can you walk us through what a day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, it is very different every day because I work in many buckets, right? So like I have ESPN, I'm still with NFL Network, I'm running my own production company, I have my own show, I'm a wife, I'm a dog mom, like I travel a ton, I do a lot of speaking engagements. So it literally is just like fly by the seat of your pants. A shared calendar has saved my marriage, I think. I'm like, where are you? Okay, cool. Like for both of us, right? Like, what are we doing today?
Yeah.
So I think like day to day is so weird. There's more of a cadence, I will say, in football season because that's like my main role.
Okay.
So like last season I was doing Monday Night Football. So there was a cadence to, I know I'm flying out on a Sunday, I'm working on Monday, I'm flying back on Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday, I'm probably on SportsCenter or doing something else. You know, Friday and Saturday, I'm probably shooting my show. So there was a little bit more of a structure, believe it or not, in the middle of the craziness of the football season. Whereas now in the quote unquote off season, it's like, okay, I'm filling in on like the morning show this week for Good Morning Football. And then Saturday I have a convention. And then next week I have a speaking engagement. And then I'm going to fly out. So it's like, it's nuts. It really is. Sometimes I miss the continuity of when I was hosting a daily show. But then when I was hosting the daily show, I'm like, man, I wish I had a little bit more variety.
Totally.
It's like, what do you want?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are in the big leagues now, but do you ever get nervous? Are there any challenges you face doing your job at this point in your career?
Yeah, many challenges. I don't get nervous so much, but I do feel like it's almost pressure that I put on myself to make sure that I'm still at the top of my game, that I'm never complacent, right? So like I'm never nervous about the action of what I do at work. That's the part that I love. That's the fun part, right? Like, yeah, let's go out there and let's do this thing. But I think that the nerves come into play with like, okay, did I prep enough? And I know I did, because I'm a lunatic about my prep and like my research stuff. But I think that the more pressure and the more visible we are, there's just more added stress in certain components of the job. And I'm working through it in therapy for sure. Gunny helps me too. But yeah, no nerves, but there's always like this, like, oh shit, do I have is everything in its bucket? And sometimes it isn't. And I think that's part of the trusting in yourself to know I have the skill set, and whatever they throw at me, like I'm going to be able to handle, and reminding myself of that.
Yeah. What would you say are a couple key attributes that you think make up a great sportscaster or a great woman in sports? Yeah. When you see somebody, what sticks out to you?
I think one, authenticity, because I think coming from local sports too, it can be very cookie cutter. And I think the people who really succeed are the ones who show up as themselves, who infuse their personality into their coverage and like that connection with the audience. But two, I think the biggest thing you need is to be a student of the game at all times. Like regardless of what sport you're covering or what capacity you are in the business, you have to constantly be studying. Like that's just how it is. There's always new players. There's always rule changes. There's always a different scheme. I mean, we're just taking the NFL, like now we have this whole international slate of games, right? Like we're in Brazil, we're in Ireland, we're in Germany, we're in Spain. Like it's a lot more, and you have to know like the historical context of what got you there, what players are connected to what. So you're constantly studying. So I think the people who are dedicated to the craft, who live it and breathe it, are the ones who are the most successful. And that can be a challenge, and it can be really overwhelming because it never freaking stops.
And for somebody that is in local sports right now, that wants to one day be on ESPN, be at the NFL Network, what piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, get your reps in. Get your reps in. I think that was like the biggest thing for me in making the jump, that they wanted to see that. One, I had been doing it for a bit, because at the national level, there is no hand-holding. At the local level either, but it's very different when you're on the national scope. They're going to throw you out there and expect you either to know it or to figure it out on your own. Not to say there's not support, but a lot of it is like, okay, like you said, you're in the big leagues now. Like we don't have time to like cater to you trying to navigate. You have to use your connections. You have to use your resources. You have to use what you've done in terms of building that credibility within whatever sports league, within the sports community, certainly with other sportscasters, to make sure that you can do your job at the highest level. And that's very intimidating. But I think that the more that you're out there and you're visible and you're connecting with folks within the space, the better it is once you do get to that point.
In retrospect, what's one thing that you wish you would have known before getting into this business?
Oh, just one? So many things. So many things. If I could pick just one thing, I wish I would have known how little I was going to sleep. Definitely would have padded in more time for naps. But I think I wish I would have known that I was going to be fine. I think we doubt ourselves a lot. And in the end, you always have it in you. Like there's a reason that you're in that space. And I think like the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome and the intrusive thoughts can really take over. And it's taken me a very long time to erase that. So like, it's funny when earlier you asked me about like my younger self, someone asked me like, what advice would you give to like 20-year-old MJ? I'm like, nothing. I'm trying to take her advice. Because back then you couldn't tell me anything. I was like so confident, so fearless, because what did I have to lose? Right. I'm like, no, let's go. Let's do this. And I think the deeper you get into it, the more reserved you are, because any misstep could really derail everything that you've built for. And that's the reality of this business.
Yeah. You know? Sometimes too much information can also be a detriment.
Totally.
Because then you're like overthinking because you know A, B, and C. Whereas early in your career, you were just
figuring it out. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're like, okay. Like there was this like fearlessness, I think, that I missed. And now I'm starting to regain that now in my 40s, to really go out there and like girl, you know way more now. And sometimes I think like ignorance is bliss, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
What would be some tips or tricks that you would tell that sportscaster that wants to make it into what we call the big leagues?
Right. I think that now it's so different because there's a wealth of information at your fingertips. Whereas before, I had to literally call a source. I had to show up to practice to talk to somebody. Now, like, every athlete has a podcast. They're giving information. We have all of these insiders. Like, insiders weren't really a thing 15 years ago where, you know. So I think the biggest piece of advice is, like, to constantly consume it and be on top of, like, what's going on early on in your career, because it moves so quickly. It moves so quickly, and you want to be part of the story, not just following it.
Yeah. Is it true that you are the first Afro-Latina woman to host your own show? Is it NFL Network?
At NFL Network. So the first woman of color, period, to solo host a show on the network, which was huge. Before that, there was maybe one or two other white women who had done it. And even that is like such a small scope. But no one really that looked like me before that had been in that position. And this was all happening in the middle of a pandemic. Like, it was just nuts. But it was something that I took on with a lot of pride, because I feel like that's how you start to break down the barriers for all the other folks who come behind you. I mean, I had no idea until it was already happening. And I was like, oh, shit, okay.
Once you found that out, was there a weight to that? Totally.
Because, again, it goes back to that margin of error. I'm like, I'm not going to screw this up because it's just not an option. But also, I cannot screw it up, because then that leaves a stain for everybody else who's trying to come after me to do this in this position at this level.
I do have a couple quick fires to get to. Your coffee order.
Oh, okay. So I love that, if we're talking Starbucks, I love that they just brought back the cortado, which is like something I grew up drinking in Miami. So that's like my now go-to. But if I'm like just doing something quick, I don't want to like put sugar in anything, I do a non-fat vanilla latte.
Okay. Your favorite travel destination?
Oh my God, Turks and Caicos. My husband and I were just talking about this. Turks and Caicos doesn't feel like a real place. Like,
I've never been.
It's the most gorgeous water I've ever seen, the softest sand I've ever touched. And I know there's places like Bali and the Maldives and all of this stuff, but like Turks and Caicos was much closer. And True. It was absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
Your favorite restaurant?
Okay, so here in LA, my favorite restaurant is this small tapas, like Spaniard place called Manchego.
I've heard of that. Where is that?
It's so good. It's in Santa Monica. 10 out of 10 recommend. It's so delicious. The staff is great. It's a good vibe. It's not sceney. Like it's literally, I wouldn't call it a hole in the wall, but it is like just like a smaller like vibe, and it's so good.
Something people often get wrong about you.
Oh. Where do we start? It depends on what capacity. I think that something people get wrong about me, the cheerleader thing. Like, they're like, oh, you probably just made it because you were a cheerleader. Like, actually, I was already a sportscaster before I became a cheerleader, and they both existed at the same time.
Which is fine.
Yeah, it was not a chicken and the egg thing, and they were both together.
The last movie, TV show, or book you watched and loved?
That I finished watching?
Doesn't
Paradise on Hulu. Please, Sterling K. Brown, James Marsden. What brilliant television. Like, if you have you watched it yet?
No.
Immediately. Binge it right away if you can. I don't know when you'll have time, but try. And it was tough because my husband and I were watching it together. Which anyone who knows, it's like, oh, I just want to watch ahead, and our schedules are all over the place. There was one night that I was like, listen, I'm pressing play. So like, you either get in the room or I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's too much, but it is so good. Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
An ordinary everyday moment that gives you true joy.
Oh my God. The truest joy. You know what's funny? Like my husband even, okay, ladies, you know, when we wake up in the morning and we're like not feeling our prettiest. I'm like, my skin's oily. I'm in a bonnet, and my husband, every day, we've been together 13 years, will roll over and say, you're so beautiful. Every day, without fail. Without fail. And I don't know, I don't tell him enough, but like, even that, and I'm like looking all crazy, like the fox on the side of the bed with like the disheveled hair, and he's like, you look so gorgeous. I'm like, what are you talking about? But I always try to reflect on it, because it's like it's really just sweet and intentional, and he doesn't say it out of habit. Like I can tell he really means it every time that he says it, and it's just like it's 2 seconds of the day, but like it happens every day, and I really cherish that.
I love that.
Yeah.
If you could switch lives with one person for a day, who would it be?
Oh shit. Oh my God. So many people. Just for a day though. I'd love to switch lives with a mediocre white man and just see
how easy it is for them.
Yes, like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing in these conference rooms? What are we doing in the office? Like, what a life. Yeah, I would say that.
Who else?
You know what's funny? You were talking about like the shows. I would like to switch for one day with Meghan Markle and just like frolic around her garden. I know she got a lot of flack for the show. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I love it.
I will take no Duchess slander in my life. Okay,
I was like, that balloon arch is everything.
I want to make balloon arches. I want to make the focaccia that she was making with her friend. I want to make lavender tea towels for after my hike. Like, can I have a soft life, please?
Can I just have that life? Exactly.
Yes, it's not supposed to be, guys. We're not supposed to relate to it. Like, she's a princess.
Exactly.
Please be serious. Like, so can we just have escapism for one night? But I would love to go to Montecito and like frolic around the compound and play with the chickens. Yeah. I want a ranch so bad. So yeah, I think Megan.
Yeah, make a little cake and
make a little cake with the edible flowers. Yes. God,
her flower sprinkles.
I love it for her. Truly.
I love it for myself.
Truly. But, please. Can we please do this?
One thing you're deeply grateful for right now.
Oh my God. I am deeply grateful for, okay, I'm going to be so real. Deeply grateful for antidepressants. Now I sound like the lady from White Lotus. Where's my lorazepam? No, very different from lorazepam. Tsunami. Honestly, like mental health is such a big thing for me, and I think like there's such a stigma still about talking about it, and I think we've all gone through really dark times, and not everybody is into therapy or medication, but for me it was literally life-changing. And so very, very grateful that I found something that really worked for me, and that is still keeping me afloat. It's a lot to deal with in this life.
You need to find what works for you.
Yes.
If you could go back in time to when you first started your career, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Invest in yourself. Invest in yourself and in your own brand and in what you want to pour into. I think we spend so much of our careers, which is how it's set up to be, pouring into these networks and into these stations, and we leave very little room for ourselves. And I think what I've learned now is that investing in yourself, like you're doing now, right, is truly the best path to establishing something that's going to be longstanding and to give yourself something outside of the industry.
Speaking of which, talk about your podcast.
Yeah. So it's like, it's interesting because everything is like, a podcast is king now, but I do call it more of like a digital show. And it's exactly what we've been talking about today. It's called Becoming Undefined. And it's about all of these things and all of these truths living within us and like breaking down the stigma and having these conversations that I think people shy away from, talking about intersectionality within the space of like TV and film, but also just in life. To your point, like you said, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a dog mom, I go to Pilates. Like there's all of these different facets of your life that pour into who you are, but also into what you're putting out there to everybody else. And so I think a lot of these conversations we have amongst each other, and I think breaking down that barrier has been really, really fulfilling.
It's so important too.
Yeah.
You know, we need to talk about it more.
Please. Yes. Let's talk about it. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Where can people find you if they want to watch you?
Yeah. So Becoming Undefined has its own pages on Instagram and YouTube, but you can follow me. My handle is MJ Acosta TV, pretty much on every platform. So nice and consistent wherever you like to be social.
MJ, I love that we did this.
I know, me too. It's so fun.